Have you ever wondered how many times you should try before giving up on love? Most people say once, maybe twice. But what if I told you about a man who was rejected 100 times by the same woman? And what happened on the 101st attempt changed everything. This is a true story of persistence, heartbreak, and a love that refused to die. It was the spring of 2008 in a small town called Millbrook, nestled in the countryside of England. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were hard to keep, and where love stories were often the subject of afternoon tea conversations. In this quiet town lived a young man named Thomas. Thomas was 23 years old, working as a librarian in the town's only library. He wasn't particularly handsome in the conventional sense. He wore thick-rimmed glasses. His hair was always slightly messy, and he had a quiet demeanor that made him almost invisible in social gatherings. But Thomas had something special. He had a heart that felt things deeply, and when he loved with every fiber of his being. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, as Thomas was organizing books in the history section, the library door opened with a soft chime. He looked up, and that's when he saw her. Her name was Emma. She was new to town, having just moved from London to escape the chaos of city life. Emma was everything Thomas wasn't. She was confident, outgoing, and had a smile that could light up the darkest room. She wore a yellow raincoat that day, and her auburn hair was slightly damp from the rain. She walked up to the front desk and asked Thomas if the library had any books on botany. She was starting a small garden and wanted to learn everything about plants. Thomas felt his heart skip a beat. He had never believed in love at first sight, but in that moment, as Emma smiled at him while waiting for an answer, something inside him changed forever. He stammered slightly as he directed her to the science section, and she thanked him with a warmth that made his cheeks flush. From that day forward, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about Emma. Every night, he would lie in bed replaying that first meeting in his mind. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the sound of her laugh when she found a book she liked, the kindness in her eyes. He knew he had to tell her how he felt. 2 weeks after their first meeting, Thomas gathered all his courage and decided to ask Emma out. She had become a regular at the library, visiting almost every other day to borrow books or simply sit and read in the quiet corner by the window. Thomas approached her one afternoon with trembling hands and a racing heart. He had rehearsed what he would say 100 times in his head, but when the moment came, all his carefully planned words disappeared. He simply blurted out, "Emma, would you like to have coffee with me sometime?" Emma looked up from her book, surprised. She gave him a kind smile and said, "Thomas, you're really sweet, but I'm not looking for anything romantic right now. I just got out of a difficult relationship, and I need time to heal. I hope you understand." Thomas felt his heart sink, but he nodded and smiled, trying to hide his disappointment. "Of course, I understand," he said. "But if you ever change your mind, the offer stands." That was rejection number 1. Most people would have given up right there. Most people would have taken a hint and moved on. But Thomas wasn't most people. He truly believed that Emma was special, that they had a connection, and that maybe, just maybe, if he showed her how much he cared, she might eventually feel the same way. So he didn't give up. Instead, he continued to be kind to her, to recommend books he thought she'd love, to remember little details about her life that she mentioned in passing. And every few weeks, he would ask her again, not in a pushy or desperate way, but with genuine hope and respect. Rejection number 2 came 3 weeks later. Thomas had found a rare book on Victorian gardens that he knew Emma would love. He gifted it to her, and along with it, he asked her to dinner. Emma was touched by the gesture, but once again declined. "Thomas, I really appreciate this, but I told you I'm not ready for dating." Rejection number 3 happened at the town's summer festival. Thomas saw Emma walking alone through the fairgrounds and offered to win her a stuffed animal at one of the game booths. After he succeeded, making her laugh with his terrible aim that somehow resulted in a lucky win, he asked if she'd like to watch the fireworks with him later. She said no, but she kept the stuffed bear. As months turned into years, Thomas continued his pattern. He would see Emma around town, at the library, at the local cafe, at community events, and he would ask her out. Sometimes it was for coffee, sometimes for a walk in the park, sometimes just to sit and talk. And every single time, Emma would say no. But here's what was remarkable. She never got angry with him. She never told him to stop or called him creepy. Why? Because Thomas was never inappropriate. He never made her uncomfortable. He never pressured her or made her feel guilty. He simply asked, accepted her answer with grace, and continued to treat her with kindness and respect. He understood boundaries. He knew that no meant no, but he also believed that circumstances change, people heal, and timing matters in love. By 2010, Thomas had been rejected 37 times. People in town started to notice. Some thought he was foolish, wasting his time on a woman who clearly wasn't interested. His best friend Mark told him repeatedly, "Mate, you need to move on. There are plenty of other women out there." Thomas's mother worried about him, seeing how much emotional energy he invested in someone who kept turning him down. But Thomas would always say the same thing. "I don't want plenty of other women. I want Emma. And I'm not doing this because I'm desperate or because I can't accept rejection. I'm doing this because I genuinely believe she's worth waiting for, and I believe that one day she might see what I see." Meanwhile, Emma was going through her own journey. The relationship she had escaped from in London had been toxic and emotionally abusive. Her ex-boyfriend had been controlling, jealous, and had made her doubt her own worth. When she moved to Millbrook, she had built walls around her heart, determined never to let anyone hurt her again. She had noticed Thomas's persistence, of course. How could she not? But instead of being annoyed, she found herself thinking about it more and more. Here was a man who asked her out regularly, but never once made her feel pressured or uncomfortable. He never guilt-tripped her, never called her names when she said no, never spread rumors about her around town. He simply continued to be kind, respectful, and present in her life in the most gentle way possible. Emma started to observe Thomas more carefully. She noticed how he helped elderly people reach books on high shelves at the library. She saw how he volunteered at the local animal shelter every Saturday morning. She heard from others in town about how he had organized a charity book drive for underprivileged children. She realized that Thomas wasn't just persistent with her. He was genuinely a good person. His kindness wasn't an act to win her over. It was who he was at his core. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Emma's walls began to crack. By 2012, Thomas had been rejected 62 times. 4 years had passed since that first rainy day when Emma walked into the library. Thomas was now 27, and Emma was 28. Life had continued for both of them. Emma had published a small book about gardening that became surprisingly popular in their community. Thomas had been promoted to head librarian. They had both grown and changed, but Thomas's feelings had remained constant. One autumn evening, Emma was sitting in her favorite spot in the library when she overheard a conversation. 2 teenage girls were talking near the shelves, not realizing Emma could hear them. One girl was upset about a boy who had asked her out and then never called again. The other girl said, "You know what I wish? I wish there were more guys like Thomas. My mom told me he's been asking Emma out for years, and she keeps saying no, but he's never been mean about it. He just respects her answer and stays kind. That's real love, not this game-playing nonsense." Those words hit Emma like a thunderbolt. Real love? Was that what Thomas had been showing her all this time? She had been so focused on protecting herself, on healing from her past, that she hadn't stopped to consider what she might be missing. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She thought about every interaction she'd had with Thomas over the past 4 years. She remembered the way he always asked about her day, how he remembered her favorite tea, how he never forgot her birthday, even though she had never celebrated it with him. She thought about how safe she felt around him, how he had never once given her a reason to fear or doubt his intentions. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to say yes. But she didn't. Not yet, because Emma needed to be sure. She had made the mistake of rushing into her previous relationship, of ignoring red flags because she was lonely. She wasn't going to do that again. So she continued to say no, but now with increasing difficulty. Rejection 73 came at the Christmas market. Thomas asked if she'd like to share a hot chocolate with him. Emma said no, but as she walked away, she felt a pang of regret. Rejection 81 happened at the library during a winter storm. Thomas offered to drive her home, so she wouldn't have to walk in the snow. She declined, saying she'd call a taxi, even though she could see the genuine concern in his eyes. Then came rejection number 90. It was Valentine's Day 2013, exactly 5 years since they had first met. Thomas didn't do anything grand or elaborate. He simply left a single red rose on Emma's favorite reading table at the library with a small note that read, "To Emma, who has made the past 5 years of my life more beautiful simply by being in it. I'll keep hoping. Thomas." When Emma found the rose, she sat down and cried. Not tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of realization. She realized that she had been so focused on protecting her heart that she had forgotten how to open it. She realized that Thomas wasn't like her ex. He had proven over 5 years that he was patient, kind, respectful, and genuine. And most importantly, she realized that somewhere along the way, she had fallen in love with him too. She had been too scared to admit it, too scared to risk being hurt again, but the feeling was there, growing stronger with every rejection she gave him. But Emma still didn't say yes. Why? Because she wanted to be absolutely certain. She wanted to make sure that her feelings were real and not just gratitude for his persistence. So she waited. She observed. She continued to get to know Thomas not as someone pursuing her, but as a person. And the more she knew, the more certain she became. Rejections 91 through 99 happened over the next few months. Each one became harder for Emma to voice, and each one was accepted by Thomas with the same grace he had shown from beginning. Then came attempt number 100. It was a warm June evening in 2013. Thomas saw Emma walking through the town square after she had closed her small plant shop for the day. He walked up to her, and with the same hopeful smile he had worn 100 times before, he said, "Emma, would you like to have dinner with me this weekend?" Emma looked at him, and for the first time, she hesitated. Thomas noticed immediately. He saw something different in her eyes, something that gave him a flicker of hope he had learned to keep guarded. But then Emma shook her head and said, "I'm sorry, Thomas. I can't." It was rejection number 100. Thomas nodded, just as he always did. He smiled, just as he always did. And he said, just as he always did, "That's okay. Maybe next time." But as he walked away, something inside him finally broke. Not his love for Emma. That remained as strong as ever. But his hope. For the first time in 5 years, Thomas wondered if maybe everyone had been right. Maybe he was being foolish. Maybe Emma would never see him the way he saw her. Maybe it was time to accept that some love stories just aren't meant to be. That night, Thomas made a decision. He would ask Emma one more time, just one, and if she said no, he would finally let go. He would cherish the friendship they had. He would always care about her, but he would stop hoping for something more. He owed that to himself. 2 weeks later, on a beautiful Saturday morning, Thomas walked to Emma's plant shop. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say, but unlike 5 years ago, he wasn't nervous. He was calm, resolved, ready to accept whatever came next. Emma was arranging flowers in the window when she saw him approach. She knew immediately why he was there. Over 5 years and 100 rejections, she had come to read Thomas better than anyone. Thomas walked into the shop, and Emma turned to face him. Before he could speak, she said, "You're here to ask me out again, aren't you?" Thomas smiled softly. "Actually, I'm here to ask you one last time. Emma, would you go out with me? Not because I'm desperate or because I can't take no for an answer, but because I genuinely believe that we could be something beautiful together. I believed it for 5 years, and I'll believe it for the rest of my life. But I also know that I can't keep doing this. If you say no today, I'll respect that, and I'll finally move on. So this is attempt number 101, and it's my last." The shop fell silent. Emma felt her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. This was the moment she had been both dreading and hoping for. She looked at Thomas, really looked at him, and saw 5 years of kindness, patience, and unwavering love reflected in his eyes. She thought about how empty her life would feel if he actually did move on. She thought about all the times she had said no out of fear, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. And finally, after 5 years, 100 rejections, and countless moments of doubt, Emma took a deep breath and said the word that would change both their lives forever. She said yes. Thomas stood frozen, unable to process what he had just heard. "What?" he whispered. Emma smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, Thomas. I'll go out with you. I should have said yes a long time ago, but I was scared. I was broken, and I needed time to heal, and you gave me that time. You never rushed me, never made me feel guilty, never gave up on me even when I gave up on myself. You showed me what real love looks like. It's patient, it's kind, it doesn't demand, it simply gives. And I've been in love with you for longer than I want to admit, but I was too afraid to say it. I'm not afraid anymore." Thomas felt tears streaming down his face. 5 years of hoping, of waiting, of believing when everyone told him he was crazy, had led to this moment. He stepped forward and gently took Emma's hand, and for the first time since they met, she didn't pull away. They stood there in the flower shop, surrounded by the scent of roses and lavender, both crying, both smiling, both finally ready to start the story they were always meant to have. Their first date happened that very evening. Thomas took Emma to a small Italian restaurant on the edge of town. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Emma apologized for making him wait so long, but Thomas stopped her. He said, "Don't apologize. You needed that time, and I needed to prove to myself that I was willing to wait for something real. Every rejection taught me patience. Every no made this yes more meaningful. I wouldn't change anything about our story." Emma reached across the table and held his hand. 101, she said softly. "It took 101 times." Thomas squeezed her hand gently, and I would have asked 1,000 more. Their relationship bloomed slowly and beautifully. There was no rush, no pressure. They had spent 5 years building a foundation of trust and friendship, and now they were building something more on top of it. Emma introduced Thomas to her family, who were initially skeptical but quickly saw how happy he made her. Thomas's mother cried tears of joy when she met Emma, grateful that her son's faith had finally been rewarded. The town of Millbrook watched their love story unfold with fascination and warmth. The couple that everyone thought would never happen had become the couple everyone rooted for. 2 years later, in the summer of 2015, Thomas and Emma got married in the same library where they had first met. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by close friends and family. Emma wore a simple white dress, and Thomas wore his best suit with a yellow tie that matched the raincoat Emma had worn on that first rainy day. During their vows, Emma said something that made everyone cry. She said, "Thomas asked me out 101 times before I said yes." Most people would call that persistence. I call it proof. Proof that real love doesn't give up. Proof that timing matters. Proof that sometimes the best things in life are worth waiting for. I spent 5 years saying no because I was afraid. Thomas spent 5 years asking because he wasn't. He taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who loves your imperfections perfectly. I said no 100 times, but today and every day for the rest of my life, I'm saying yes. Thomas could barely speak through his tears, but he managed to say his vows. "Emma, from the moment I met you, I knew my life would never be the same. You made me wait 5 years, and people thought I was crazy for it. But I wasn't crazy. I was certain. I was certain that you were worth every rejection, every disappointment, every moment of doubt. Because love isn't about convenience or timing or even reciprocation. Love is about choosing someone every single day, even when they're not choosing you back, and believing that one day, maybe they will, you were always worth the wait, and you always will be." They kissed as husband and wife, and the library erupted in applause. The girl who had said no 100 times and the boy who had asked 101 times were finally, officially, forever together. Their story became legendary in Millbrook. Parents told it to their children as an example of patience and perseverance. Teenagers quoted it when talking about what real love should look like, and Thomas and Emma lived it every single day. Years passed, and their love only grew stronger. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, both of whom inherited Thomas's kind heart and Emma's bright spirit. They grew old together in that small town, still visiting the library where it all began, still holding hands like they did on that first date, still choosing each other every single day. And whenever anyone asked Thomas what the secret to their love was, he would smile and say, Never give up on something you believe in, but also always respect the other person's journey. I asked Emma out 101 times, but I never once made her feel bad for saying no, because love isn't about wearing someone down. It's about being there when they're ready to say yes. Emma would add, and never be too afraid to take a chance on love. I almost let the best thing in my life slip away because I was scared. But Thomas showed me that not all love hurts. Some love heals. Some love waits. Some love asks 101 times because it knows you're worth it. This is the story of Thomas and Emma, the story of 100 rejections, and one yes that changed everything. It's a reminder that love isn't always instantaneous. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes patience. Sometimes it takes believing in something when everyone else thinks you're foolish. But when it's real, when it's right, it's worth every single moment of waiting. Because at the end of the day, the best love stories aren't about people who fall fast. They're about people who fall forever. So if you're out there wondering whether you should keep trying or let go, remember this. Thomas asked 101 times. Emma said yes on the last one. And they lived happily ever after. Not because the journey was easy, but because they both believed it was worth it. And that, my friends, is what real love looks like.